right, welcome back to the Pantera build. I know I'm using it as a shelf again, but life got in the way and I stopped working on it for a while I blew my back out and had a bunch of other crap go on. Anyway, so I'm back on it now, but during that time, I did have lots of thoughts about what we could do or what's gonna happen in the next steps of moving the body and the chassis. And this is something I've been considering since the very beginning, because a lot of Pantera owners talk about how tight they are. And just watching the reviews of the cars and the cameras on the other side, you can see like their knees are on either side of the steering wheel when they're driving these things. And of course, I don't know the height of these guys, but I'm 6 foot and I need this to be a pleasurable driving experience. And honestly, my son wants to drive this car too, and he's 6'5", and he's not fitting in there at this moment. So yes, I'm thinking about extending it, how to extend it, where to extend it. These are all big concerns and questions of mine right now. But I don't think I want to do that until I have the body mounted, because for me, although I could, I could measure any other car and look at from the back of the seat to the pedal dimension and whatnot. I need to feel it. I need to be in there and understand what it's all about and get the dynamics down. So with that, I think I'm going to not extend this at this time. Still going to move the body in the car over there. And yeah, like look how close that is. We know the engine was already 2.5 inches longer and it moved it that much more forward. Yes, I could probably relocate the alternator and the pulley and all the brackets on this side. But even if I got like the Holley, relocation kit for all this, I'm only going to buy myself like 1 inch. And that really means the chair can stay here and then there's a wall that goes in there. So anyway, there's a bunch of other stuff to consider. But if I just extend the chassis 4 inches, that would be a lot easier, right? But I don't know exactly how far I want to extend it yet. And on the body, where do we cut this? So it's pretty much an empty shell. As you know, there's not much going on in here. You know what? All these body lines look great. You don't want to disrupt the body lines. And you definitely don't want to extend it through here. Yes, you could probably extend the trunk and whatnot, but that might look all goofy. But I do have a situation here where the door posts are rotten on the inside anyway. So why not, where this body line levels out to go into the door, like right here, cut this off. Cut this off and extend it however far I want. Let's say it's 4 inches. I'm just ballparking 4 inches at the moment. And I have to rebuild it anyway, so extend it here 4 inches. Leave this, maybe rebuild this. Well, obviously rebuild that, there's nothing left. And then take it out of the roof skin up here, because you see I've got some sections of rot, I don't know if you can see that or not, that are bulging out from the inside. So I need to do some repairs there anyway. So that would be a really convenient spot. And although I have this glass and the stainless trim for it, I think maybe putting the side scoop on would also help detract from any extensions that actually went in through this area. So those are my thoughts going into this next segment. But like I said, I'm going to get the body over there, hoist it up, get the chassis underneath of it, and lower the body down onto it. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll mock up the seat in that location and then put the steering column back in it and just understand what it's like to sit in that environment and feel the situation. If it's too tight, we're going to lift it all back off and we're going to cut it and we're going to extend it. I think this is the perfect time to do it, because if I go ahead, rebuild the car, restore it, get it all running, stopping, driving, and then I'm going to extend it, might as well shoot myself in the head, because that would be the stupidest move ever. So while I'm here, I might as well address it and deal with it. So let's start moving cars, I guess. Last night's marketplace score, a set of C6 coilovers. Thanks, Tom, appreciate it. This alleviates all the concerns I had about running the air ride system. I was holding out, just watching marketplace, fingers crossed. I was like, I've got time. Let's just have a constant alert on C6 or Corvette suspension, and finally a set popped up. So this is fantastic. Now the rear ones are a bolt-in. The fronts, however, although from the C6, aren't going to work for my C4 application. So I got the QA1s in here. This is what it came with the front suspension. I'm not tied to these. Obviously, I'm gonna have to change the springs, and the dampening rate isn't adjustable on these either. So not tied to those. Maybe I can retrofit those in here. Still TBD. Yeah. So that's exciting. What else was I gonna say? I don't know. Let's get moving this car. All right, finally it's moving the Pantera day. Super sketch setup, but there's no way to actually get wheels underneath of it without dollies, because there's nothing to dolly, because there's nothing there. So we've got the pump truck wedged in there, and it's just picking up what's left of the firewall. Dan's going to be steering that. And in the back end, I'm just going to carry it. So you just got to walk it over there, and then we'll put it back down. Oh yeah, right. We'll have to bring the jack stand with us. Yeah, we'll just get it over there, and you know what, we should probably put the chain hoist up there first. Right, okay. Let's set the camera up and we'll get rolling.
Is it on?
Yeah. That's exciting. Well, we have some issues, but fun issues, kinda. So now that the chassis or the body is lined up over top of the chassis in its correct place, the wheel centers are on the wheel center, right? Everything's good there. We can see there's a problem with the upper control arms. Remember in episode, I think it was 2, maybe when I was talking about the front suspension, how the control arms of the Corvette sort of have a 50-50 split. And on the Pantera, it's pretty much, the mounts come straight out and then it dog legs over here to the side, so it leaves lots of leg room. Well, this is the issue now. So you can see where the toe board is and how much this is going to cut into it. So, and same thing with the lower control arm. On the original Pantera, from the ball joint, it pretty much goes perpendicular straight over, mounts to the frame, and then there's a dog leg on the lower control arm, which brings it up over here as well. So, and you know, you can see all this is actually lined up with the body, that's all fine there, but it's taking away 3.5 inches of toe board room. So that's really mostly going to affect, maybe not even so much my feet areas, it's going to affect the pedal swing. So the clutch and the brake pedal swinging into the area on the driver's side over there. So we got a couple of design options we can do here. The first one is we leave it the way it is. We don't do anything, we just deal with it and shorten the pedals up. But we already know the Pantera has a very small cabin at best, and I'm not going to fit in there with the engine the way it is now anyway. So I need as much toe room as possible in there. So 2 things I can do: change the control arms or change the wheelbase. So if I cut this whole front end off and move it ahead 3.5 inches, all I would have to do, because I have to recreate this entire piece because it's rotten anyway. This is all gone down here. This is covered in Bondo. I could literally take that wheel arch and go move it over 3.5 inches. That whole thing gets moved over 3.5 inches and I'm done. Then I get to use the Corvette suspension. Everything's fine. And you probably wouldn't even notice the difference. In fact, what I'll do is I'll take a photo from the side here, and then I'll move the arch, and then you can see the difference. I've looked at it so many times now, I'm thinking that I could probably get away with it. But that's not how I like to operate. So I could do that. The other option is, because I really like doing things twice and 3 times and 4 times, is that I could take the control arms from the upper and lower from the Pantera, modify them to work, or get the ball joints from a Corvette, modify the upper control arms and lower control arms from the Pantera, put them in the space that's required right here, like mount a jig to hold the rotor where I want it, on the caster at the angle, everything where I need it, make a plate to hold the upper ball joint, and then weld it to the upper and lower control arms of the Pantera original suspension, and then they come straight out. And then I've got lots of room. I'll still end up modifying the frames. I need to bring that ahead the 3.5 inches so it's in the right spot of the toe board. But then I get to actually recycle the original Pantera suspension. Let's go outside and look at it. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so this is the front suspension from the Pantera, and you can see from the ball joint, it's not 100% dead straight, but you see it's just kicked off a little bit, but the front part of it goes way out to the side, and same thing with the lower control arm. The front end kicks way out to the front, and the rear is pretty much in line with the ball joint, so you can see it down there. The only problem with this, and you can see the way this one adjusts, is it's got 2 bolts here, and this ball joint slides back and forth. I can lose that, and I can recycle these steel control arms and modify them as I need. 2 things I like about this thing is I can probably run the original sway bar then, and it has a really good coilover mount down below. The thing I don't like about it is that there's no way to adjust the caster on this upper control arm. All these are fixed. There's no way to adjust that. So, and unlike, you know, like a Mustang 2 or a GM style where there's a cross shaft, maybe I can retrofit this with a cross shaft, or maybe, probably, which would be easier, would just be making eccentric holes and making something that slides back and forth on those control arm pivots. So that's the way I'm leaning. Pull this apart, clean these up. I can buy new bushings for that, modify this to work with my ball joint scenario, but don't use the geometry from this Pantera. I'll use the geometry from the C4 Corvette, but maybe I'll dig deep into the roll centers and anti-dive geometry and see if there's maybe a better optimization, because I just took the geometry from the C4 Corvette and then just stuck it right on there. So maybe there's a better geometry setup for my upper and lower control arms based on what's going on here. So that's where I'm leaning right now. And on the back, this is a 2-parter. On the back, you saw how the seat is actually right up against the engine. I think I might buy myself a little bit more room there. So although the rear is dead center in the wheel well right now, no problem. I don't think I moved the engine back as much as I could have, because once I measured it out, this is the original mount for the transaxle from the transaxle, but you can see the mounts down there for where I've relocated it. I didn't move it far enough back to take advantage of this. It's pretty much just an inch farther back. So I think I'm going to remove the motor mounts, remove the transmission mounts, and just scoot that engine back maybe 2 more inches. And I don't really care if the transmission hangs out the back of the car a little bit. It's kind of cool looking, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, that would buy me more room for the seat and allow me to put a proper firewall in there, so just to have as much lean back as possible. So yeah, lots to do. I'm still gonna think about what I have to do on the front end there, but I think that's what I'm gonna do there, is change those upper and lower control arms. And so next part is jack this thing to the ceiling, get the frame table leveled out, disassemble that, cut it all apart, and make some jigs. Yeah. All right, so I'm here disassembling the front suspension on the Pantera, and yes, it's a rusty pile of crap, but you know what was astounding? Every bolt came out. Look at that. These are the bolts that I'm pulling out of the front and upper and lower control arms. Even the shock, it's perfect on the inside. That's crazy. I didn't expect that at all. I fully expected to have to torch this whole thing apart to get the control arms off. Everything, I cut this one off because I was like, I'm not going to bother saving that. But even the sway bar bolts just undid. Unbelievable. Just like that. All right, so I've got the upper and lower control arms pulled off, and they actually came apart really, really nice. No problem here. But I think I'd really like to recycle them, because you can see the back edge of the upper and the lower control arm is well ahead of the toe board on the Pantera. So this buys me all the room I need inside the car. And yes, I'll have to reconstruct the frame, but there's a lot going on here, and let's get into it. So I think what I'm gonna do is that if I recreate the geometry from the C4 upper and lower control arms into the Pantera upper and lower control arms, I think that would actually be really cool, because then I'm like resto modding the upper and lower control arms. Yes, they're rusty. Yes, I can fix them. And yes, I've got new bushing as an order, and the ball joint. So on the Pantera, this upper ball joint was adjustable for the camber, not so much the caster. The caster came preset on these things. So incidentally, the caster originally on the Pantera was 6 degrees back, and then I guess at some point Ford bumped it up to 2.5 degrees, because maybe they felt the steering was too heavy because they're running manual racks, not a power rack. So I've gone back to a power rack, and the C4 is already at 6 degrees from the factory-ish, right? So I think what I'm going to do is go back to the 6 degrees and build it into the upper and lower control arms when I go ahead and mount that. It'll be the baseline, and then I'll make it adjustable from there, right? So with all that said, so what I did is I ordered new ball joints for the C4. Incidentally, guess how much each one of those ball joints is in Canada? $200 each. So that'd be $800 just to get ball joints. Now, I'm not sponsored by Rock Auto, but these ball joints from Rock Auto are 30 or $16 each. So $60 for a set of ball joints? Yes. Those just arrived in the box over there. So now I'll build a jig to mock up the upper and lower control arms, and I'll get the ball joints mounted in here. And to make these ones adjustable, I'll probably just make some eccentric bolts, kind of like how the C5 rear lower control arm is adjustable. And it's just you turn the bolt and it moves it back and forth. Okay, so that's done. And I'll build a jig to hold this hub in place. And as long as I keep everything in the same plane between the mounts, the steering rack won't have any bump steer, so that's fine. And I think what I'm going to end up doing is cutting this whole front frame off, extending this bar out so it lines up with the outer edge of the toe board. And then I'll probably cut all of this off, change it to maybe even something narrower. Like I can probably get away with a 2x3, maybe even a 2x2, depending on the angle. So the angle, that's another good one. This has been something I've been thinking about for a long time now. And now it's an issue, because you can see how steep that upper control arm is, right? And that's the anti-dive angle set up from the C4 Corvette. And that works fine in a Corvette where the engine and transmission is right there, and the center of gravity is farther forward. My center of gravity is way back there, somewhere there-ish. So I've been studying all week trying to figure out the best angle to redo that. If I'm going to redo the whole front suspension, let's take a look at that angle, right? Because right now I think it's like 100% anti-dive based on the engine and everything in the back of the car. So that's going to screw up my handling, maybe braking in the corners, don't know. So, and I have a lot of variables that I don't have answers for yet. Like, what's my center of gravity? What's my weights, etc. I don't know those questions, right? So what I did is I asked chat, and I typed in, I have a 1974 Pantera, and I'm sticking a C4 Corvette front suspension into it. How do I calculate my anti-dive angle? And it literally said, just to get like a 10 to 15, or no, it was a 15 to 20% anti-dive angle, all you have to do is measure from 30 to 50 inches in front of the front wheel, measure up 20 inches for the center of gravity of Pantera, and then from that point in space, draw a line through your upper control arm. That was it. So I'm flabbergasted. I'm like, yeah, okay, totally. I'll look into that. So at least gives me a good baseline as to where to start with that angle. The lower control arm, it's like a 1/2 inch up on the front and a slight angle down, and that one's like whatever angle that's going to be. So I have to calculate that out. But done. So I guess the first step now is going to be modifying these things. I'm still waiting for these bushings to come in from the Pantera place in the States. So I'll get the jigs made to hold the ball joints in place, get them welded into here at the right angle, cut all this off, build jigs to hold this, and then same thing with the steering rack, keep that in the right spot. So yes, it's a lot of work, but what would I be doing? Driving the car? Let's keep working on this thing. All right, so the bushings came in for the upper control arms, but since then I've had another thought about using these upper control arms. Yes, I can modify it. Yes, the ball joints are here, and I can probably modify a plate to put it where I want it, right? But I still don't have an easy way of adjusting this without making an eccentric bolt style setup. But what if I do this? The classic Mustang 2 upper. It's very similar in its dimensions, but I think what I'll do is I'll modify it. I'll cut these bars off. Basically, I'm just going to use the cross shaft and the pivot here and mount the ball joint where I want it, make a plate, and then make new bars to put it exactly where I want it, based on the geometry of the C4 upper control arm. And then, rather than attaching the bolts the same way through this, I'll do it like a typical Mustang 2 upper with just a plate, and then it's with some slotted holes, so I'm not worried about roll center, because then I can adjust it, and then I can also adjust the anti-dive, and then also the camber. I always get the caster and camber mixed up. But then I've got something that's infinitely adjustable, right? Makes way more sense. Then I don't have to worry about the roll center right away. So let's get bending some tubes and making some plates based on the C4 geometry and get these things welded up. All right, so my son is back from university. So I thought there's no better way than to bond with him than having him build the Pantera. If he ever wants to own this thing one day, he's gonna have to earn it. So, and you can see there's a bit of a height difference here. So we're gonna have to definitely accommodate some seating position for him in there at some point as well. Maybe get a smaller set of seats. So in the meantime, I had him disassembling the front suspension, and we still have to cut off the complete front suspension because we're going to build all that new while I'm working on the control arm. So how do you feel about grinding and cutting? And
Just get to it.
all right, good enough. Hey, where'd you graduate from university from?
Or mechanical engineering.
That's right. All right, let's get after it. Look at that. Blood. I helped him out for 1 second. I managed to cut myself on the top of the head. I really need a helmet to wear at work on this car. All right, so that's been removed now. So all that hard work, you know, hindsight's 20/20. I probably should have looked at that firewall toe board before I actually started welding this up. However, I thought the C4 was a good solution. It still is. I can still use the spindles and everything, but now we just got to modify the control arm. So now the next step is to bring this frame back out to this point. And I think to buy myself even more toe room, knowing that the control arms are going to sit even farther forward, I think I'm going to put the 2x4 that goes across here on the outside of this dimension here. So basically I'm just going to drop a straight line down to, let's say it's here, and then I'm going to weld the 2x4 here. So I need to cut this up, or in this case, Dutch needs to cut that up. So we can have a nice zigzag pattern here, so when we weld the extension in, it's still nice and strong. So let's modify these, and then we can put the crossbar in here, and we can start to figure out what that needs to look like. All right, so Dutch has got this 36-inch crossbar cut. You can see the filler pieces that need to be made here now. So what we need to do now is line up this to this, make sure this is in the right spot, square it up to the table, and tack it to the table, and then we start making these filler pieces. Good?
Let's do it.
All right, so the crossbar is in there, but Dutch has to leave us. We took the afternoon off to go down and look at the tank museum to get ideas for the frame on this thing because it's so heavy. But Dutch has to go home. Wah, wah, wah.
Sad.
What are you doing now?
Back to working on robots.
Back for the work, his first job for the rest of his life. Now that he's done with school. Unfortunately, he can't tell us anything he's working on because of all the NDAs he's had to sign yet. So, but custom robots, future. Anyway, so he'll be back hopefully in October, and hopefully this thing will have progressed farther at that point, and the front suspension will at least be on by then. Yes, it will be. So I'm going to start mocking up with the frames on the front because I need to put the tubes on the front so the A-arms can actually bolt on. But first I need to mount the spindles and build the control arms so I know where those tubes have got to mount. So that's the next on the list. But Dutch, thanks, buddy.
Pleasure working with you.
Oh, see you again, sir. Wah, wah, my son has gone back to BC. Oh well, he'll be back at some point. But in the meantime, I got to keep going on this thing. So this is the cross member we cut off the front for the old C4 suspension we mocked up. Never actually got to use it. So I'm going to recycle the tubing off this today. Unfortunately, today's Saturday, and I boned during the week about thinking I would be doing this on my birthday today. Just leave me alone. I want to work on my car today. And I didn't actually pick up any metal. So I need these tubes, and I'm just going to recycle them. I'm going to put this basically back into the car, but I need to shorten this up 4 inches and cut these brackets off so I can relocate these. I would probably make new brackets, but this hole is actually the same diameter as the hole we'd use for I'm making new ones and putting the exact same hole in it for the Pantera. These are the bushings for the Pantera crossmember. So just narrow them up in there. And then make another bracket because this mounting hole was actually in this crossmember. Anyway, and cut the brackets off of this. These might stay, but I might shorten them because I'm going to go with a 2x2 on here and have a plate sitting on top that's now adjustable for the Mustang 2 style of crossbar. So yeah, lots to consider there, but in the meantime, let's process this and get it offered back up to the chassis. Actually, maybe this is a bit of karma. Remember on that, was the third, anyway, the video I was doing the front suspension, I forgot to include you in this part because I lost the footage, so I get to rebuild it again. So this way we get to see it all over again. So here we go, karma. All right, so now that this has been modified, well, there's a bit of I had to cut some of the extraneous welds out so it sits level. Anyway, that's more or less it. I'm not gonna like 100% tack this in place just so I don't get burned again. I'll probably I'll square it up, make sure it's zero, throw a couple tacks in it, and leave it until the control arms are built. Man, I guess we can start working on the lower control arms first and figure out how that's gonna work. This looks pretty good. Yeah. Next. All right, it's time. Let's make a control arm. So I'm going to make a hybrid between the Pantera control arm dimensions and the C4 Corvette lower dimensions. Let me show you what I got. So, camera set up. All right. So this is the basic layout. So what I've done is I've taken the geometry from this is the driver's side control arm from the Pantera. And I've got the dimension laid out between the two pivot points. But I need the pickup point from the C4 ball joint. So what I've done is I've made these plates to pick up the angle of the ball joint off the C4 with the dimension to the center line of the pivot point of the C4, right? Piece of cake. So what I've done is I've made up all these components to fit in this location. You can see the line there, right? I'll probably trim all that stuff down, but I just need the basics right now so I know where everything is going to go. And what I've done is I've bent up a bunch of tubing to get me into the place where I need it to go. So that's a crossbar and that's gonna go here. So let's cut this stuff up, tack it in place, and then we'll figure out what we need to do to reinforce the center of it, like a webbing section here. All right, let's do it. All right, so that is tacked together now. So that's the basic shape of what I'm after. Of course, I would love to leave it like this, but I'd be worried that as soon as I hit a bump, that's just gonna tear off. So I'm gonna put some sort of gusseting in there, much like there was on the original Pantera. So this stuff here, I think it's like 14 gauge, it's like 75 thou. It's pretty thin, but the Pantera is also known for cracking on the sway bar mounts here. So not that I'm trying to replicate this by any stretch of the imagination, but it is different. Of course, this one's running giant C channels, and of course I'm running tubes. So, and, you know, as much as I want to recycle this one, I don't think I should bother. I'd have to repair this stuff anyway, and then I have to modify the ball joint area. So it's just for what? I already had to, so let's back up here a little bit. On these components I made, these tubes here were actually 30 mil ID. So I took an 1.5 inch tube and I turned them on the lathe and opened them up. So I got the bushings for the Pantera. And I think I told you this already, or I maybe mentioned it, but the bushings for the Pantera. Let's see if I got one here. Yeah, there we go. So that's the bushings there. You can see how much rubber there is in there. It's really tight. Because I was going to go to urethane style bushing, but urethane squeaks, right? And I like the rubber, I don't mind it. But you can see the original size of the C4 there. It's a giant piece of rubber in there. Even that would be loosey-goosey. So you could switch that out to urethane and make it tighter, or I could just go back to these things, these really tight Pantera. There's not a lot of wiggle room in there. There's a little bit, but not a lot. So anyway, for those open 30 mil, those will fit in there perfect. So that's why I went for this style. And yeah, the ball joint is just the regular C4 lower. So now I need to make some gussets for these things just to create some sort of inner structure like that. All I have is 100 thou, so that's I think it's 11 gauge, 12 gauge. So let's make some L brackets up. I don't care about this return here. Might feel that out later, but let's just work on this style of bracket. It comes off and goes down, and then we'll create the same sort of triangle in here. So I think I'm just going to bend up a bunch of 100 thou plate with a 90-degree angles, and then actually that 90-degree will be another reinforcement bracket from this plate that I can weld to it and bring it up this way. So let's do a bunch of 90 degrees, and then we'll fill this plate in. And then as much as I want to TIG this together, I don't want to pull this off the table while it's just ticky-tack together here, because if I go to take it to the TIG now, everything's going to move. So I might do a majority of the welding with the MIG and weld the bejesus out of that, and then flip it over, and then maybe do the last part of it on the TIG. So let's bend up some brackets and get them welded in. All right, so these panels are, unfortunately I don't have a shear that'll shear anything this thick. There's even at 100 thou. So anyway, I got my line. Let's bend up these brackets. I got this really brutal brake press that I bought at a hydraulic brake press that I bought at an estate sale. And it's uber sketchy, but it's very homemade with what's going on here. It's definitely advanced users only. Let's see if we can bend this without breaking anything today. All right, good enough? Good enough. On. Not for the faint of heart. What this thing needs is really a pressure gauge. No relief valve, there's no nothing on it. I just know when to stop because the hydraulic lines swell up. All right, so the plan here is to angle cut this side of it and weld it to that and weld all of this all the way around, creating all these extra structures in here. So, without adding a lot of weight. All right, so let's cut that, trim that to length, and ticky-tack it in place. All right, well, that's the first bracket ticky-tacked in there, and that is looking pretty good. Sure, it may be overbuilt, although that's not a word I generally care about. I'd rather be safe than sorry. I'm not so worried about this part bending. Actually, I'm more worried about probably the weakest point here is probably going to be this area right here, and the thickness of the metal holding this control arm in place. Maybe what I should do, because I like building tanks apparently, maybe put a strap from here around there and weld it to the backside, giving this a little bit more meat. I mean, the ears are going to be here. They're not going to, the frame's going to be there. It's not really going to interfere with anything, but it's just a peace of mind more than anything. For sure, this is going to weigh more than the C4 lower control arm, and it's probably even going to weigh more than that one just because I've increased the thickness of this metal. But kind of don't care. I'm the kind of guy who likes to go sideways down dirt roads, and a little bit extra security goes a long way for me. So let's cut these brackets up. You can see what I'm working on there. That's going to get cut into there. Got to modify over that, ticky-tack it in place, and put another one down there. Well, I'll probably have to make a filler piece there. Anyway, no big deal. Let's time lapse this stuff in place, get it ticky-tacked in there, and then we'll finish welding in with a MIG. I think that's probably going to be fine. I can probably do all of this with a MIG. I'm not too worried about tigging it in. Maybe I'll do that last part. But let's, because it's on the table and it's jigged up here, let's just weld as much as I can while it's attached. That lower control arm is pretty much done here. There's nothing else I can do here because I got to finish this last weld, but I can do that off the table. Let me break this one off. Let me mock up the other side and get the other lower control arm together. Flip it over, finish the welding, finish that one line, make the strap across the back here. I'll do that with a TIG. Trim all these lines out, make this all look super proper, and then we'll get them both together and start making the jigs or mounting the spindles back on here, putting the ball joints back on the lower control arms, mocking them up to the lower frame here, and start building the brackets that are going to hold it to the frame. All right, so that is all tigged on there. So this is just me being paranoid. I've seen in the past in a similar tube fashion on a 4-link suspension on a hot rod. Both of those tubes on one side of the axle had stretched. Now, I don't know the circumstance, but we noticed the axle was out of alignment. We ended up fixing it. But I was like, why or and how did that stretch? But since then, I've always been paranoid. It was probably like maybe you had the brakes on and you hit a massive pothole, or maybe you hit something. I don't know the situation, but it's just always been in the back of my brain that tube could possibly stretch if you hit something. So that's just me being paranoid, like I said, about that. And that just removes any paranoia I might have. Well, sounds like the other one's done. Let's let this one cool and check out the other one. So I saw a technique, or heard about a technique, I decided to try it, where you put it in the oven for a little while and it normalizes the metals, whatever that is. So anyway, let's try it here. Oh yeah, looks like it's been done. It's been on there for the past hour. Pretty good, not even hot. Anyway, let's get the bushings put in here and get a ball joint in there, and then we can start mocking it up on the frame. Oh, that's the other side. Yes, almost there, baby, almost there. All right, so how to locate the lower control arms. I had Dutch make these up when he was here. So this holds the spindle at 12.5 inches, which is the half of the overall height of the tire. So that's where the spindle rides. And then I had him put a bracket on the back of it here that holds the caliper bracket in place. So I get that 6 degrees caster that I'm looking for, which happens to be the original Pantera specs and the C4 specs. So it's at the right spot in relation to the body, and it's at the right caster. The camber will change because I'm going to make an upper or adjustable upper control arm anyway, so that doesn't matter right now. So let's clean. Actually, it's probably time to clean up that spindle. It's looking kind of dirty. We'll clean it up, mount it in here, mount the control arm into the spindle, make sure it's level this way, make sure it's level this way, and then we'll start making the brackets that are going to hold it to the frame. All right, so I got the brackets made to hold the control arms in place, and I just put them, just literally ticky-tack them on the top in there just to hold them in place more than anything while I get the upper control arm sorted out and figure that out. So cut the pieces, some pieces, for the upper ball joint mount. That's where that's going to fit in there, right? And then I also mocked up, or I cut the old Mustang 2 upper control arm apart and pulled the sleeves off the bushings and got those mocked up in the location where I need it. So you can sort of see my chicken scratches here with this line and this line. That's the distance between the center to center is the same as the C4, but I need the offset of the Pantera. So you can see how this ball joint is definitely a lot closer to this side and how the original one is. And that's where the toe board's going to sit. And that's where I need the room because, as we know, that part of it was into the toe board. Anyway, so a couple of things I thought were interesting. So the Mustang 2, which is a 74 Ford, right? That era. But that thing is also 1974. Now, this could just be complete coincidence, but I thought this was interesting. So I pulled the sleeves off here that hold the bushings in place. Incidentally, these bushings are 30 mil. This is a Pantera bushing. It's also 30 mil. And it happens to fit perfectly inside the sleeve for the Mustang 2. So these are aftermarkets. I don't know if these just happen to be a weird coinkydink, but kind of interesting that they're both the same size. Anyway, I can't use them anyway because the hole for the center is different from the shaft for the cross member or the cross shaft for the Mustang 2. Just kind of one of those trivia points more than anything. So this is my basic layout. The only thing I need to consider here is the anti-dive and how I'm going to account for that, because this one here is at like, you can see that angle on there. That's like 14 degrees. So, or sorry, 7 degrees. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do with that because I'm not going to be running that sort of anti-dive anymore. I'll have it adjustable. So I can probably reduce that angle a little bit and still keep that angle. So that's what I'm working on right now. Let me get this thing set up and then we'll start. I could probably even just go with straight arms. Really, the only thing I have to worry about here is the suspension unit coming through the center. So I don't know if I'll curve these or not, or maybe notch this out, but that's the only thing I have to worry about there. So let's get this thing set up and then we'll start building some control arms. All right, so the control arms are back together. I might end up still cutting this out depending on how much that gets in the way of the shock that goes through here, the coilover. But everything's back together, the cross shafts are in. So now I need to work at mounting the cross shaft to the frame. So I think I'm gonna make this plate adjustable. So how we're gonna do that is with some slots. So these will be the plates here that mount the control arm to the frame. And these will basically just mount on, it'll be 2 slotted holes so I can adjust the anti-dive and the roll center and then shim it out as well. So I think this is gonna be the easiest route to do it, and then I don't have to worry about exact geometry right off the get-go, and then I can mock it up and adjust it once it's welded up and in there, as long as I leave myself enough adjustment. But even still, I think I'm gonna leave myself only maybe 2 inches of play on both sides. I'll mock these up to where I want them and then give myself the 2 inches of play in there. So let's slot these holes and we'll start mocking them up on the So lots of thinking about this. The slots have been created. They look great. And the other one I've mocked up. So I'll show you what's going on now. So I mounted the plate to this side of the cross member. So I've seen other situations where, like on Chevelles and whatnot, they're mounted on this side, or GM stuff. I'm not sure if it's just all Chevelles, but anyway, GM stuff. A plate like this is mounted on this side, and then you can adjust the camber back, right? So you have more room for adjustment. This way it's limiting that, but how much more caster am I actually going to add? The reason I'm putting it here, not on this side, is because I need more room for the coil over here. But now that the body's here, there's a couple other things we need to consider here. Let me hook you up. You can't see anything there. All right. So if I mount the 2x2 here, that allows me some great structure here, and then I can probably even come off of it and build a support for the coilover. But that puts this tube right in the middle of the toe box area. So that's not going to work with my through the frame idea and connect it to the dashboard hoop I want to put in there. So I think what I'm going to do, and it's actually really good, the body's over top of it right now. But if I mount the 2x2 on this side of it, the tubing actually will be perfectly in. So let me back up here. The bottom of this plate right now is exactly this angle that goes across the top here. So I know where that sits in space. And if I put a 2x2 right here, that will actually poke right through the toe board right there, out of the way of the toe box, and allow me to go straight through and connect to the hoop around the dashboard. So, but then I have to get creative with the bracketry. So again, I was going to put a support bracket on the back of this, but I think what I'm going to have to do now is just go like maybe, a 1-inch piece and just go straight down and bridge it across the 2x2 down here, and maybe put a 45 or a smaller 45 on this to this 2x2 as well. So, and I don't think that's going to interfere with any coilover situation I might have here. And like I said, I can still open up this part to buy myself a little bit more room. And in fact, so this is 3.5 inches. So for the top plate of the shock mount I want to build here, since this edge here ends at that 45 there, then 3.5 inches above that will be the tower here that I'll build to hold the coilover in place. And maybe I connect this bracket to the actual bodywork on what's left of the Pantera, or the new constructed sheet metal for the Pantera that will eventually be back in there. So yeah, but there's a lot going on here. So I'm just going to sit here and look at it for a while and make sure I'm making the right decision, because then we can lose these. But I think that's in a really good spot. It doesn't look like it's going to interfere with anything else. And I don't think I need anything more than a 2x2, because I can connect it here, go straight across, poke out that wall there, and just leave it long for now until I get the dash hoop in there. And maybe because that'll also be so if I imagine this platform here, that'll be the tray, or the most lowest point of the frunk on the front of this thing. So that can be where, if I was going to put a spare wheel in there, that's where it would be. But the wheels on this car are wider than the depth of the trunk, so that's not going to work anyway. Really, it's a CAA, or it's a call my friend kind of towing circumstance, if that's the case. In which case I should probably put tow hooks on the front of it. Either way, so let's cut these off. Let's figure out what that tube is going to look like, and then cut some more metal. All right, so the plates have been cut. And just like that, the plates have been cut. So now we have a lot more to consider on the front end geometry now. I'm not worried about, I've sort of moved on from the adjustability of the anti-dive and the roll center for now, because as long as I mount the control arm in the middle of this at where the spindle is locked in place, I should have loads of room for adjustment either way. So not a concern there. But where I'm mounting this plate is kind of, I don't know, unusual, because on the GM world, they usually have this vertical plate mounted on this side, and then you can adjust the camber as much as you need to, right? This way I left myself like a 1/2 inch, and I can adjust it only back that far before we come up to a hard stop. So maybe I'll put a couple more washes in there. I don't know how much I'm ever gonna have to adjust it that far, right? I'm not one of those stance kids with their camber, their wheels like this and riding on the edge of the tires or anything like that. Anyway, so if I leave it here, not on this side, I buy myself more room for the coilover that is eventually going through here. And I'm probably still gonna end up cutting this back a little bit to buy myself a little bit more room in there. So, but there's a couple other things to consider, and it's real convenient that the body happens to be over top of it, is now I can sort of look and see what's going on above it. Originally, I was going to mount a 2x2 on this side and build a, like a nice 45-degree bracket and then an angle plate above to hold the coilover. But I think that's changed, because if this 2x2 carries through, it's actually going to go right into my toe box up there. You can see where that hole up there is where the swing pedals fit for your pedals, so that's not going to work. But if I move it to this side, it'll actually go to just to the right of that opening, right in that corner right there, and it will actually travel right through, and I can then angle it up and go right to the hoop above the dashboard I want to weld in there, so they're connecting it all together. So, but that means, what do I do for reinforcement brackets on this plate? Because I only have so much room underneath of it to put like a little 45, but I think maybe if I end up adding like a 1x1 1/4 inch down the back of it, down the back of this, and then bridging it across the tube down here, that should probably be enough. And then maybe for the support bracket, or the bracket that's going to hold the coilover, it would actually travel up on an angle and actually maybe attach to the back of the body, and I can box it in somehow. Because the bottom of this, incidentally, is exactly on this return right here, this 45 return. So that tells me in space where it's going to sit in the car, and that is completely out of the way. So I think that's the plan moving forward. There is to get rid of these, cut some 2x2s longer than required, zero all this stuff up, get it at the right roll center for now, and the right anti-dive. Then weld these tubes in place, and then I think it's time to start lowering the body. Yay! Finally. So everything is mocked up. Let me show you what's going on now. So just ignore all the brackets here. These are just tubes keeping everything square. So this tube is now running parallel with the frame at exactly 5.5 inches above this frame. So you can see the tube here and where I have it in relation to that plate there, and how it's all going to work out. I think right now it's in a really good spot. I've been sitting here just staring at it, trying to figure out if I've incorporated everything, or I'm thinking everything through. With the coilover going through, I have lots of room between this bracket or this tube and the coilover. Putting a bracket across the back here is fine, and even an angle bracket or an angle tube from this tube to this tube to lock it in, and maybe another one just like this on the back side of the tube, and then probably maybe a 2x2 running from this one to that one, maybe two of them. And that'll create a floor for the frunk, and a way to support both sides and give lots of structure to the upper control arm. And I think now, looking at this tube in place, I think I can sort of tell what's got to happen and how it's going to attach itself to the dash rail. I'll get that light down there. So you can see this old curve right here in this old tube. This one used to hold the old front suspension up in place, but this will disappear. But I think this tube, since now it goes through right here, will actually, I can actually just make one and have it curve up and join the dash rail and the door post support just following this line here. So I think that'll actually work out okay. But that allows me, just seeing this allows me to focus on the next stage and what it's going to look like. Because all this will get cut out, all this will get cut out, and then this will just drop down right over top, and then I can actually start building all that structure from underneath and replacing everything from the core on out, from the middle on out. Like, look at this, right? Everything's just got to come off. Where do you stop? So I think that's in a really good spot. I think I'm going to eat lunch though, come back and look at it, and just look at it some more and make sure I've got everything covered here. but I think it's all in a really good spot. So I think I'm going to work with this. All right, let's get welding, or let's get cutting and then welding. Cutting, measuring, welding. Measuring twice. Sure enough, at lunchtime I had another solution about what to do here. So look at that Chenga mastery of stacking tubes. But you can see I've got a tube, let me get down here. I've got a tube on top of the control arm bracket here now, and I was thinking about this one having to enter the cab. But if I go above, it still supports it the same way. I can still put my brackets underneath of it or on the back of it. But what I like about it is, so let me get the light. What I like about it is that this tube now, like this lower tube would actually get cut through the fire or the toe board here, right? And I would have to build a tube on the inside. But if I go with the one above, it's actually put it right in the same spot as this one. So I can actually, once all this sheet metal gets rebuilt, I can still attach this tube to the, and you know, curve it back in here and actually attach it to the doorpost support and the dash hoop rail. So I think that's actually a really good spot. And this side of it actually coincides perfectly with the old bracket up here. And this whole support will get rebuilt that holds up the front of the sheet metal on this car. So I can actually put a bracket to join that right into this one. So all this thing gets cleaned up. And it gives me a really good coilover mount, because now I can just take the bracket right off the side of this tube. So I think this is a bit unorthodox looking, having it upside down, but does it really matter? I think I really like this. So let me get set up to first of all align that, of course, but then I gotta figure out what this piece of tubing is going to look like from this point to this point, and then how I'm going to support it in the back. So I can still build a tube down there that doesn't get in the way of the steering column bracket. And then what a reinforcement bar between the two is going to look like. And if, you know, if I do put a frunk in here, I can easily put some sort of basket in here, but I think I'm actually going to cut the hood down like on the front end of a GT40, so the wind that goes in the radiator can leave through the hood of the car. But that's a long way away. But let's flip that bracket upside down and reimagine what that's going to look like. So the more I look at this, the more I like it. I think this is actually, so this happens to be 13 inches here, so that's good. This is ticky-tacked in place now. This isn't going anywhere. The back bracket looks good. Now what I need to do is remove all the Chenga supports so I can build some sort of bracket from the back of this tube down to that rear cross member. So I think what I might do for now, to give me another chance to look at it. Yeah, I'm digging the way this is working out here. So I might just attach like a 1x1 on the side of the frame and bring it up and then just weld it to here right now. Right now this is 2 3/4 inches away from the side of the frame table, up dead parallel and level, so it's fine. I haven't welded this on yet. This is still like an 1/8 off. I need to make it flush in the back, but I can always add another shim here, not a big deal. So that's fine. But let's get this bracket attached to the frame so it's stable. I can remove all of the Chenga, because I actually need this for the other side. That's the tube I cut like this one for the other side. Disassemble this, rebuild it on the other side, and do the same level of ticky-tacking a frame, the upper frame, to that side. All right, I am liking the way that looks right now. I got the front supports in on both sides, and this is all square and level and true to the frame and holding up this control arm. The other side I have the bracket for, but really the left and right should be exactly the same, so it's all based on numbers, so that one's in the exact same place, just on the opposite side of the car. But now I need to come up with a solution between, or to mount the back edge of this tube down to the frame down here somehow. Don't know what that's going to look like, because that little bugger, the steering shaft, gets in the way of a nice diagonal bar that would fit nicely between there. So I have to come up with a solution there, and of course just it'll be easy to match it on the one on the other side. So I think I'm going to call it here right now because I need to come up with a good solution on that. And I've been pushing this one. The wife's chasing me down. She's probably going to text me in a second to get back in the house because we're leaving for Berlin right now, or Germany. So it's for our 25th anniversary. I got to get out of here. I got to shower. I got to get to the airport. So I'm going to think about this for the next 10 days. And then I'll be back. So, auf Wiedersehen. Guten Morgen. I'm back from Germany. It was a great time, but I can't tell you anything about that here because, you know, adult content and stuff. But you had to subscribe to my OnlyFans account for that one. Anyway, thinking about this thing. I got carried away this morning. I just radiused these things out in the anticipation of putting the coilovers in. So you see I have the coilover mocked up here right now. And as much as I want to put that in, I could probably put the bottom mount in on the lower control arm. But I'm hesitant to make anything for the top yet until I have the compressed height, full range of motion, all that other stuff. But what I can do in the meantime is think about that bracket there and how I'm going to support it. Looking at it, I think I can put a bit of an angle bracket in here. And let me show you. So from this plate here, I can probably put an angle bracket down to this 2x4 down here and support this whole thing. And then, you know, maybe here, I put a diagonal or a cross brace that goes across to pick up the other one. And this is super supported and it's holding up the back end of this tube here so I can get rid of these braces for now. So when it goes to lower it down over top of it, these aren't getting in the way. Yeah. So, and I guess I should actually start welding some of this together rather than my ticky-tacks. The whole thing's got welded together with ticky-tacks right now. But it's holding in place. It's holding in place. So either way, let's make up some brackets and see what that is going to look like. All right, so I made some brackets or the tubes. All I do is transfer the frame dimensions to the table here and then sort of connected the dots with a 2x2 1/8 wall tubing. So let's see if it's going to fit as hopefully as I want it to. This will be kind of awkward holding it all in there with one hand and not dropping it. So let's hold that there. Get you in there. Oops, dang it. All right, so the plan is to use this tube to bridge this 2x2 in that plate down there and keep it out of the way of the steering. And you can see that it's actually cleared the steering rack there quite nicely. So I can still put the AN fittings on the steering rack, and actually I can probably weld this tube to the lower control arm bracket there on the angle. Yes. So, but I can't weld it in because I have to weld up all the joints underneath it. So I'll take this out. All the joints that are behind it, like I still haven't welded up this bracket to the lower frame yet there. So weld that one up and weld this thing up. And then I can bury it underneath that tube and ticky-tack that thing in place. So let's weld that up, ticky-tack those things in place, and then take a look at what that crossbar is going to look like. So there we go. Got a couple more things welded up and in there. This is all super strong, and I've got these things just ticky-tacked in there for now. So now, this crossbar, I think by putting one, where'd my ear? Here it is, just an offcut. But if I mount it across there, sort of imagine the top of this tube at the bottom of this, that sort of puts it in the same spot as, let me see here, the end of the tape measure, right at the end of that 45 up there. It's kind of like 12 inches to the bottom edge of the car. So imagine that's sitting on the bottom of the frame there, 12 inches to sort of see where my thumb is there. It's sort of in line just above that actually. So by putting this 2x2 across there, attached to that tube though, I'm just looking at the angles, that's the height of the original trunk floor in the Pantera. So I think that's actually going to be okay. You can see the proximity to the return of the power steering there. But if I use an AN fitting and probably like a 90-degree fitting, I think that'll clear just fine. Or it's kind of close. I mean, I can notch that tubing, worst case scenario. So anyway, I think that'll be fine. And then just make it from this side to that side. And that'll be the trunk floor, and that'll hold this apart. And everything will just be fine, right? Right. So before I ticky-tack this thing in place, I just want to really look at that fitting. I don't know if I can put the AN adapter in there and then put a 90-degree fitting on that for the return line. Mind you, I could just use this return line and put a hose on it, but if you imagine that drawing sort of a straight line off of there, this little bit of the tube, this 2x2 is going to get in the way of that hose. And I definitely don't want that chafing on there. So I might put a notch in this side of the tubing just to be sure. And it'd be a lot easier to do that on the bench than it would be in the car. So why don't I just V that and hit it in, weld it in, so I've got a nice valley in that thing, so I'm not worried about it, or it doesn't come back to bite me in the ass in the future, which, you know, if I leave it, it will. So, but I think that looks good. It's supporting the upper control arms. It's giving me a trunk floor, and it's holding up the whole back of the whole back half of this front frame setup. So I think we're there. All right, let's notch that quick. All right, so that is now being notched. Now I can put whatever AN fitting or straight fitting or curved fitting, or even just put a regular hose return back on this down to a hard line, which will carry it to the back of the engine. So that's covered. So I think I can, and it's level, so I can ticky-tack this thing to the uprights, and then that means I can probably commit to welding these things in a lot more permanently rather than just leaving those ticky-tacked in place. And once all that's done, I can remove the back supports off the back of these upper rails, and then I can start thinking about what it's going to take to lower the body down finally. Yay. All right, so what's next? Probably the coilover mount, but I can only do one half of it, and that's the bottom. So let me explain. As we know, this is part of what's left of a C4 front suspension, but this suspension came from a C5. And I don't have this style mount, so why would I make a bracket to work with this style mount when I've just got a flat plate here? So this is actually an 18 mil hole going through the center here. So if I've ordered in some 18 mil bolts, and I'll just drop through there with 2 ears and then weld those ears to the lower control arm. I think that would be the easiest solution. But I can't do anything with the top of it quite yet. So I think, well, I don't think, I can't do anything with the top until I get the body on the chassis, a wheel on the spindle, and have it jacked all the way up to its limit. And then I can make, or pull the spring, compress the shock, figure out the top mount of where it's going to be, and then do that. Because I'm going to see if I can use this internal bump stop and use the full range of the coilover in there. Then lower the shock back down, get it to ride height, adjust the coilover. That's probably going to be too strong for this car, because this came from originally from the front of the Corvette where there was an engine. So I'll have to adjust the spring rates anyway, but I can't do that until the car is on the ground and I have the corner scales on it. So I'm nowhere near that part of it yet. So that can wait for another time. I did take the sway bars off the front of the Pantera though, just to mock it up to see if I could get it to work here. It'd be kind of cool to recycle this stuff, right? So it's pretty good. It's a bit old school in its foot pedestal mount here, but I can still make a plate to mount that. And I just had to move the pivots in an inch so I can mount it to the frame better, and I'll just make a collar there, and that's fine. And the one in the back actually lines up really good as well. So I'm just going to recycle the stock sway bars out of the Pantera. I think that'd be fine. And that's about it. I have to trim I can get rid of the supports now. I got to trim this, but the next stage is actually cutting the toe board off and lowering the body. So let's call this video here, because the next stage, or actually this video was supposed to be lowering the body, but we ended up rebuilding the suspension again. So the next video is going to be lowering the body, where I can cut that and start dropping it down. I still have to move the engine back a little bit, but that's literally just cutting those mounts off and moving them back however I see fit. And honestly, I kind of want to see it with the engine in. So let's drop the body down anyway, get this all in position, ticky-tack it all in place, and then we can start playing around with the rebuilding process, because all this stuff is going to get replaced in there. I got to cut the whole front end off, and etc, etc, etc. So next video, let's drop the body on here until we get the rocker down to the bottom of the frame, and then we can start looking at it and sinking our teeth into things we have to do next. So yeah, that's it. hope you're liking these videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video, and talk to you later. Talk at you later.